What if the biggest lie in building wealth is that you're supposed to trust Wall Street with your money? What if the real path to financial freedom is creating cash flow that shows up whether you work or you don't work? And what if the same strategies that create passive income could also help you fund more real estate deals? Well, today you're about to find out. Welcome to Raising Private Money. I'm Jay Conner, also known as the Private Money Authority. This is the podcast where we talk about how real estate investors like you can fund more deals, scale faster, and stop depending on banks. Now, today's guest is a great friend of mine. We're in masterminds together. His name is Chris Miles. He's known as the Cashflow expert and unapologetic anti-financial advisor. Now, after seeing firsthand how broken the traditional financial industry really is, Chris walked away from the conventional advice most people follow and built multiple streams of passive income that allowed him to retire not once, but twice before the age of 40. Chris is the founder of Money Ripples, the author of Work Optional Blueprint, and the host of the top-rated Money Ripples podcast. Now, through his work, he's helped clients create more than $300 million in increased cash flow and long-term passive income. And here's why I'm so excited for you to hear this conversation. Chris teaches how to stop relying on Wall Street and start putting your money into assets that actually produce cash flow, which is exactly the mindset successful real estate investors need. In just a moment, you're going to meet my good friend Chris Miles right after this.
If you're a real estate investor and are wondering how to raise and leverage private money to make more profit on every deal, then you're in the right place. On Raising Private Money, we'll speak with new and seasoned investors to dissect their deals and extract the best tips and strategies to help you get the money, because the money comes first. Now here's your host, Jay Conner.
Chris, welcome back to Raising Private Money.
Jay, it's always fun to be on your show, man. I love it.
I love having you, man. So you call yourself the anti-financial advisor. That's a pretty bold title. What did you see inside the traditional financial industry that made you say this system is broke?
Yeah, it is pretty bold. I definitely don't make a lot of friends among financial advisors, do I? The thing that got me to do that was actually because I was a financial advisor. In the early 2000s, I did that for 4 years. I was selling the whole set and forget it. If you just put your money in mutual funds, because you'll be diversified if you put your money there in Wall Street. And if you just set it there forever, you'll beat real estate. You'll beat everything, because the stock market is the best place to be. And in 40 years, you'll be financially free. Well, 4 years in, my dad reaches out and he says, well, Chris, when are you going to advise me? Understand that my dad was the penny pinching post-depression era mentality saver. He's the kind of guy that Dave Ramsey says, I want to be like Ron Miles when I grow up. That's the kind of guy my dad was, right? He was the cheap penny pinching guy, stuffing his money, saving it. And that's all he taught me as a kid. So naturally I became a financial advisor because it was familiar to me. Well, as I sat down with him and I looked at his finances, he opened up all of his books. I saw that he had paid off his house in 18 years. So he was 100% debt free. He had been stuffing money in his company's 401k, getting the match as well for decades. And at the end of it, this is at the end of 2005, at the end of this meeting, I had to tell him, I said, well, Dad, here's the deal. You're 61 years old. If you try to retire right now with the money that you have and the fact that you're debt free, you would need to die in about 5 or 6 years, because that's when you're going to run out of money. And my dad said, well, that's not what I wanted to hear. You're supposed to tell me how I can retire, not, retire and then have to go back to work again when I'm in my 60s and 70s. And I said, he said, well, what do I do? What's the answer? I said, I don't know. You did everything right from what I teach as a financial advisor. Just keep saving, keep working. And that's what he did. He worked into his 70s until he wasn't able to work anymore. He got a few decent years, a little bit of freedom. And then pretty soon his health was so bad that he was bedridden for the last 5 years of his life. In fact, he just passed away last December, 81 years old, literally broke. All he had was, equity in his houses, and that was it. He had no cash left. In fact, we were paying for his home health care. And that's the thing, is that when I had that meeting with him, it really disturbed me that he was living the absolute poster child model of what I was teaching. And I was seeing my future because I was living by the same way. I was teaching my clients to live by the same way. And I saw my future and it didn't look good. And I didn't want to believe it. And it was just a month later that a friend of mine, who I trained to be a financial advisor, but then he left to go do real estate investing. He was a flipper. And I'm talking to him and he says, Chris, my dad and I, because his dad was, doing the hard money lending. He's like, my dad and I have partnered on some deals and we've now doubled his income as a professor at the local university. I said, how is that possible? You just started doing this months ago. This is too good to be true. That's impossible. My financial advisor brain won't allow it. And he finally just asked me, he said, well, Chris, how many of your clients are financially free where they don't worry about money? And I said, well, none. Even the retired ones still worry about outliving their money. Great job, Chris. How about this? How many of you guys as financial advisors are financially free, not off the commissions you're earning, but actually doing the investments you're recommending? And when I was really honest with myself, and I did this mental inventory of about 100 advisors in my office, including advisors who have been there since the 1970s. And I had to say and admit, I said, you know what? I don't know if any of them can. There's your problem, Chris. And so I started asking him, well, what do I do? He didn't want to help me at first because he thought I was just all about Wall Street. And I told him that real estate was crap. But now as I realized, okay, maybe Wall Street's crap. So he, of course, had me read a book called Who Took My Money by Robert Kiyosaki. It's a lesser known Rich Dad book that says mutual funds suck. And then he had me listen to this AM talk radio show. This is pre-podcast era, right? This radio show of these two real estate investors here in Utah. And I got hooked. And eventually after a few months, I realized I had a choice. Either I stay in financial advising and keep teaching the lie, or I leave it. And so I chose the latter. I left. I said, I'll never teach about money again. I will be a mortgage broker, because in 2006, anybody could be a mortgage broker. And I will teach ballroom dancing on the side. And that's what I was doing, while eventually starting to learn about real estate investing, and even things like I could hard money lend my money and start, making money that way, and cash flow and things like that. So eventually, as I got into that real estate world a little bit, I was able to retire myself. I only needed $3,500 a month to live with my small family. I was able to have $4,000 or $5,000 a month coming in passively that I was barely working at hardly, maybe a few hours a week at most to do. And that's what blew my mind, is like, wait a minute, I could literally just quit. I could quit being a mortgage broker. I could just retire. And naturally, people want to know, how'd you do it, Chris? And so friends and family started asking me that. Eventually, I came out of retirement in 2007 to start coaching people how to do it. And you mentioned I retired twice. Well, that's because I screwed up the first time, because the recession hit. All of a sudden, my real estate's going to crap. The real estate investors I'm training, because our market was mostly flippers, they were all broke because they didn't have any money. And so as a result, I found myself going from financially independent to all of a sudden now in the hole about $16,000 a month, to where eventually by end of 2007, going to 2008, I was over $1 million in debt. And I eventually had to pivot in business. I stopped teaching people how to get out of the rat race because I was now back in it. So teaching people how to find and free up cash, because that's what I was doing in my own life. I wasn't telling them I was broke. I was just telling them, hey, I can help you find money. And that's what I was doing during the recession, was able to finally dig out of that debt hole. And then by the end of 2016, retired for the second time, had enough passive income coming in that I was now what I call work optional. And that's what
well, Chris, we now know why you are known as the anti-financial advisor. So now let's start diving a little deep here.
Mm-hmm.
What are some of the key income streams and strategies that you deploy, that you use, and that you also share with your clients?
It depends on the market. I'll just tell you about all of them in general, although depending on the market, it can shift around, which is the beauty of real estate and alternative investments. Understand that as a financial advisor, no one taught me that I could do alternative investments. Yeah, I heard about people renting houses, right? Doing those as rentals. And I would tell people all the time, well, appreciation is less than the stock market, so don't do that. But I realized later that it wasn't about the value of the asset. It's about the income. And so, for example, when I teach people, most people come to me for the investing aspect because they want to be hands-off investors. I've even had some active investors say, you know what, I'm sick and tired of being an active investor. I want to be the passive one. I want to take all these money I've been making off active investing and creating passive investments. And so, for example, turnkey rentals, great a few years ago, not so much the last few years, but turnkey rentals where somebody else can manage the property is perfect, especially if you're like me, where I live in the western half of the US and rentals suck. But I can go buy a property out near you, Jay. I can go buy properties out in that direction and make much better cash flow, get better prices, better rent in comparison than I would out west. And so I can do that where I can get property managers to manage the property for me. I buy it, but ultimately it's my property and I get the profits off of it. I've also done hard money lending. That's been more the darling for the last few years, right? Because lending has definitely been a safer route to take, even short-term type lending or going to lending funds. It's great to know that I can make 1% a month on my cash. Every $100,000 can pay me $1,000 a month. I don't do jack squat. I love it. Another one that I've been doing the last several years, mineral rights. Obviously, we've been hearing more and more in the news about crude oil, and the gas prices going up and everything else. Well, hey, if they're going to go up on me, I have to pay more at the pump. I might as well get paid on the investment side too. So I have business partnerships with that. There's things like raw land I can get involved with, where again, I'm the partner that finances it, but I'm hands off. They do the work. I'm the 70% partner that finances it all. I actually have one that I put over $500,000 into that now is generating over $12,000 a month, about $150,000 a year. Things like even like syndications, of course, of various sorts, whether it be in multifamily, self-storage, even done better the last few years because those got kicked in the teeth. Industrial had done great, didn't have any issues at all with industrial. So things like that. There's just so many options that are available that just most people never realize because a financial advisor either one doesn't know about themselves or two will never tell you about them because they never get paid a commission off of recommending those things.
Wow, what you went over there, Chris, truly is multiple streams and opportunities. So when you consult with and advise your clients, when you're doing consulting with them, is part of your consulting advising them based on where they are, what their asset classes look like? Do you advise them on what could be probably their best avenues to get involved in? Because there's so many to choose from.
Correct. That's exactly it. Yeah. So we're not investment advisors. We never cross that line to say, you should invest here, you should invest there. But what we do, that doesn't sound very good. It sounds kind of stinky. What we actually do is we do go in deep. We look at their cash flow very, very like microscopically in the sense that we're looking at money coming in, money going out. Like, even on the simple, do you have debt that's coming in, that's going out that maybe we could restructure and do differently to improve your cash flow? Can we reduce taxes, especially if you have a business owner, or if you're not a business owner, can we create a side hustle to get more tax benefits? Things like that. But then we start to look at where's the assets, where can we actually liquidate some assets, whether it's sitting in cash or not, and get that money to work for you to generate income now. And that's where we do kind of mix and match and figure out like, okay, based on your situation and your goals and your time horizons, what are the kind of investments that work best in that environment? Not just going all in on one investment, but even to diversify in different places. And of course, yes, we got a network of people that I've invested with because people always ask, they're like, well, Chris, who have you trusted? Who have you used? And so we kind of open up, my Rolodex, so to speak, for those of us old enough to remember what a Rolodex is. I guess for us now, it'd be, open up my, my AirDrop, phone or whatever it might be, but that's what we do. So we kind of help guide people. We never say you should do this, but we do educate them, help them know how to do due diligence, to know what could be a good fit. And we give our honest opinions. If we say, hey, this could be risky, we will let them know, listen, there's a good element of risk here. There's risk with everything, but this might be really risky, and so even if they have their own deals, they might ask us to give them their, our opinion of what it is. And so that's the fun thing. I'll tell you an example of one client. They came to us only because they wanted to diversify into real estate. Both of them, one worked in business. The other one worked as a consultant in the tech space. They had $5 million between Google and Meta stocks. So very tech heavy. And they're saying, we should probably diversify because tech is a little bit volatile, right? So they came to us saying, help us find what real estate investments are out there. Now, as they did that, as we started to look at the cash flow first, and this is kind of the first step of the process, we're always looking at the cash flow, low-hanging fruit, where's the money leaks, right? And we realized that their goal was initially to get to $23,000 a month of passive income because that's where their expenses were. That would make them financially independent. But when I looked at it, I said, well, looking at your debt, even though they were making 800 grand plus a year of income, they still have some different debt in different places. And so I said, if we refinance your mortgage, lower the payment there, even do a cash out refi, we can pay off these specific debts based on an equation I call the cash flow index. So we pay off these specific debts, we'll free up $3,800 a month with no money out of pocket. So right there, that's 45 grand a year in your pocket for free. That's an infinite rate of return. And I said, second, I'm pretty sure based on the amount of taxes you're reporting here on your spreadsheet, I bet you we could probably do some tax saving strategies to help you. Here's our CPA, go talk with them and see what you can do. They talked to the CPA, found out they were overpaying by at least $30,000 to $40,000 a year in taxes unnecessarily they're paying. So right there, so we're already over like 75, 80 grand a year. Then I see they have a rental property. And I say, well, how much is this cash flowing? It says zero. They're like, no, it's zero. But you got 200,000 of equity in this thing, but you make no cash flow? Yeah, we're not. Cool. Why don't we look at maybe selling that property? And then could you take those proceeds and invest it elsewhere? Even if you bought another property, just cash flows better. So they did. And then, of course, now they started creating another $2,000 a month. So now we already created over $100,000 a year without, again, investing a dime. Then we finally said, great, now the stocks, what can we do? And because remember, that 100,000 a year reduced costs for them, right? As well as increased some income. Now the nut to crack wasn't so hard to get to. And so I said, well, now all we have to do is really, you could literally just cash out $1.5 million, $2 million of your stocks, keep still $3 million in these stocks, use those to go into real estate in different places here. And you will generate this year over that roughly almost $300,000 a year. I mean, if they cashed out everything, they give you over $600,000 a year, but I was being realistic. I knew they wouldn't cash out every little bit of stock they had. But that's the fun part, right? It's just, these people don't even know what's possible. They don't even realize what's available to them. And to take them from, gee, I hope I can retire in 20 years to, oh, I can do it now. That's the rewarding part for us.
That is amazing, Chris. Most people are taught to focus on net worth. Mm-hmm. You teach people to focus on cash flow. So it may seem like a simple question, but just to be sure, in your opinion, why is cash flow the real scoreboard when it comes to financial freedom?
Yeah, net worth fills your ego, but it doesn't fill your bank account, right? Let's be honest. It's kind of like people in business. It's like when people in business tell you like, oh yeah, man, like our revenue jumped up to 20 million this year. Cool. How much profit did you have? Oh, I paid in 100 grand. I had $100,000 loss. Well, who gives a crap about how much you make as a company revenue? We care about what's the bottom line, the profit. That's where cash flow comes in. No one gives a crap about net worth ultimately. I mean, other than trying to brag about it. But at the end of the day, the real freedom comes from having income coming in. When you have more than enough income coming in than what's going out. When you have that abundance of cash flow, that is where there's abundance in your life. That's where you create real freedom. And I think that's the part that so many people miss. Remember, in financial advising, the focus is always on accumulation, right? Accumulate and grow your nest egg to be so big. But it's never usually about, well, how do I actually have income in a reasonable amount of time? I'll give you another example. There's a guy that reached out to me recently. He found our Money Ripples podcast and he said, listen, like I'm 59 and a half years old. I just turned. I've got almost $2 million sitting in my 401k right now that I could use. I went to my Vanguard financial advisor, and when I asked them, when can I retire? And when they asked me, how much income do you want? I said, $200,000 a year. And they wouldn't give me an answer. Chris, he's like, they didn't give me a timeline. They didn't say how much longer I have to work or how much more I need. He didn't have an answer for me. And I told him, I said, listen, having been a financial advisor, one of two things are possible. There could be a third, but there's two likely scenarios. One, either because he doesn't know how to calculate it, or two, he's afraid to give you the answer. Because I'll give you the answer right now. If you want to retire in your 60s, people talk about the 4% rule, BS. 4% rule was debunked so many years ago. It's just people trying to sell you crap that still believe it works. Dave Ramsey is one of those people. He thinks it's an 8% rule, and that's even worse. Even his own co-host argued with him on that point. But it's a 3% rule if you're in your 60s, 4% if you're in your 70s, because they think you could probably last 20 to 30 years on 4%. So that's because people are living longer. That's why they say you have to wait till your 70s to live on the 4% rule. 3% if you're in your 60s. I said, if you want to be 3%, based on having $200,000, that means you got to have roughly just about $7 million saved up. You've got about 2 million. You're already in the top few percent of retirees right now. And yet you still got to triple your money. I said, the thing is, you can easily be working till you're 70. If you keep saving and you hope that the market smiles on you just the right way, you could make it by the time you're 70. And here's his answer, Jay. He said, Chris, I don't mind working till I'm 70. I just don't have to be forced to work till I'm 70. I don't have to feel like I have to work till I'm 70. And I asked him, I said, here, get rid of the whole accumulation theory that they've been teaching you for literally your entire adult life, which is set and forget it, which makes money for the banks and the institutions, not for you. Vanguard loves it. The financial advisor loves it. He makes money whether you make money or not. He's the only one that's guaranteed that financial prosperity from this, not you. I said, instead, look at it this way. You've got 1.9 million in your 401k. If you were just to take that money and invest in different places, and on the low end, usually investments we look at are like 10% a year, usually 10 to 12%. It's kind of the typical range that we see depending on the type of agreements or contracts you have in place. So let's just say you get on the low end, 10%. What's 10% of 1.9 million? 190,000 a year, right? What's your goal? 200,000 a year, correct. Now, I've also noticed too, you've got a property with about 800,000 of equity. What's your cash flow? $300 a month. I'm like, okay, that's crappy. You can go cash that out and put money in a CD and make more money. What if we sold that property, got the equity out, and let's just say you're left with 700,000 after paying, those sales commissions. $700,000 making 10%, that's now 70,000 a year. That puts you at $260,000 a year, over $250,000 a year. Do you realize you can either gamble and hope and pray that you make it to age 70 before you can finally retire in the stock market, or you can get your money working hard for you right now, generating income, and that's acceleration of money, and you can actually now retire this year. Which would you rather have? The answer is pretty obvious.
That's brilliant, Chris. I love how you're using the different strategies and stacking them together. You've helped your clients create over $300 million in increased cash flow. When you have a new client comes to you for the first time, what are you noticing some of the biggest trends or financial mistakes, common mistakes your clients have been making before they sit down and visit with you?
Yeah, I mentioned a few of them in that story with the person that had 5 million in stocks, because they had a lot of the same ones. Taxes is a big one, right? I mean, if they're a business owner, most likely, even if they're newer in business or not even making a huge amount of money, often we can find at least $5,000, $10,000 a year just by using strategies. The problem is most people have an accountant, but they don't have a proactive accountant, a strategist they don't have on their team. They have somebody who can impute the numbers you give them, but they're not giving you strategies to reduce your tax burden. And no, this is one of the biggest mistakes I see, and this is true even among real estate investors. No, saving into your IRAs or your 401ks is not a tax saving strategy. That's complete BS. Because the truth is, it's a tax deferral strategy. You're just pushing off your taxes to a future date. Here's the problem, especially if you're a real estate investor, it's even worse. The problem is this, is that if you have an IRA, right, you don't pay taxes now. You're like, oh, cool, I got the little deduction on it. Well, no, you just delayed your income is what you did. But now going down the road, let's just say that maybe you wind down your real estate a little bit. Maybe you start to slow down. Now you don't have all the active expenses you had from your business. 2, if you paid off your house, you don't have all the mortgage interest right now. 3, your kids are grown up and hopefully grown up and out of the house, right? But you don't have your kids to support anymore to get that write-off. You've lost all your write-offs and you just pushed off your IRA to whatever age they tell you it needs to be, because the government makes all the rules, not you, to be 59 and a half or whatever age it is at that time. Guess what? You're now paying taxes potentially at a higher tax rate, especially right now with the Trump tax plan. We're at one of the lowest brackets in the 110-year history of the federal tax rate. So do you think taxes are going to go up or down in the future, especially considering how much debt we're racking up in the trillions of dollars every year? Everybody will say it's going up. Well, why in the heck would you go and put your money in IRAs and 401ks only to know you're going to get taxed more. Don't you think the government knows that? And that's why they're pushing those on you, those little products. That's why. It was a little rant. I'm sorry, but like that's a big problem is that people are investing in, and especially real estate investors. If you're putting your money in the stock market, oh my goodness, why would you invest in everybody else's company but your own, right? Why would you put your money in something you have zero control when you have more control investing in your own business? Do that first. Forget Wall Street. Wall Street's a joke. It's high risk, mediocre returns, and of course people, not tracking their money. That's also common among real estate investors, not tracking what's coming in, going out, both in business and at home, those kind of things. All kinds of leaks happen just from not watching your money. It's the law of attention. Whatever you pay attention towards will improve. It will grow. But whatever you ignore will leave you. If you ignore your spouse, she's going to leave you. You ignore your kids, they'll leave you. You ignore your health, it'll leave you. You ignore your teeth, they'll leave you. You ignore your money, it will leave you too. If you just start to pay attention to your money, start to track it on a weekly basis. I do this in my own company and I report it to my team. So there's full transparency there. I let them know what's going on. That keeps me more accountable. It keeps me looking at what's going on, and that can help me plug up those money leaks that could be leaking out of my company, especially with subscriptions and AI stuff and this and left and right. You don't know half the things you're paying for anyways. You might be able to reduce costs and get yourself lean and mean so that there is another real estate debacle in your life or in your business. You can pivot. You don't have to lay off 3/4 of your workforce like a lot of real estate investors did over the last few years. So there you have it.
Chris, that is brilliant advice. One thing that you talk about and that you're an expert in is this thing called infinite banking. On a very, very simple level. Explain what is infinite banking and why do you like it?
Yeah, I was on the Ryan Pineda show recently, and he's like, "Hey, I've had 5 other guests talk about this. I don't get it, honestly." And so here's what it is, right? In fact, by the time I got done, after just a few minutes, he's like, "Everybody should be doing this. In fact, I should be doing this," even after he was skeptical. It's a tax-free, high-yield savings account that's 100% protected from lawsuits and creditors in most states. Almost nowhere, other than a 401k, which we just talked about was crap. It's like locking your money in prison. But if you want to have liquid cash available, especially for your deals or for even just having as an emergency fund, right? You want to have liquid cash available instead of earning nothing% that you get taxed on in the bank account. Instead, I keep my actual money, most of it, in my whole life insurance policy. Most people think of whole life insurance as just death insurance. But the benefit of whole life is that, yeah, there are costs that come out for the death benefit. But the way I've designed it for myself, and now I've started to do it for clients too, is that we reduce the cost as low as possible. So more of it, instead of going to pay for really the agent's commissions, that's the big lie that's out there, instead of paying for all the insurance costs and the agent's commissions, instead more of it goes into this tax-free high yield savings account, paying about 6% a year right now. And like I said, in most states, it's 100% protected from lawsuits and creditors. This means if you have millions of dollars stored here, no one, and I mean no one, well, okay, the IRS can get to anything, even your Cayman Islands account, right? But other than that, no one can get to this money. I've had real estate investors that have been sued, especially over the last few years where there's been bad deals and things like that. They've been sued by investors. And this is the only place that even when those investors might win, this is the only place they can't tap into those funds. It's the only place that's safe. Where your savings account, gone. Your home equity, gone, right? Like depending on if they can pierce the corporate veil or not, right? Like all those things. Your IRAs, they can tap into those, right? They can get Roth IRAs, you name it. Your 529 kids savings plans, you got it. They can get to it. But your life insurance, they cannot. And so I use it not as just so much of a death benefit, even though that's a nice additional perk, of course, that I have a way to create a legacy plan for my family. But I use this as like my Swiss Army knife, where I can not only be able to store my cash and make more money on it and protect it too, but then even when I do decide to use it for investments beyond just my emergency fund for my business and my personal, I also can use this money to make money in 2 places at once because I can get a secured line of credit against it with no minimum monthly payment. I can pay back whenever I want and use that money at a low rate to then go invest elsewhere. So they keep paying me on my money tax-free while I pay low interest to them. That's, could be a tax write-off if it's used for business purposes, and I'm investing it too. So I'm able to make money in 2 places at the same time. That's the power of it.
That is powerful. Chris, my lands, you've shared so many powerful ideas here on the show about cash flow, breaking away from the traditional financial playbook. So for our listeners who are thinking, I need to learn more about this stuff from Chris and start applying it to my own investing and income strategy, what's the best way for them to connect with you and learn more about the work that you're doing?
Yeah, you can go anywhere that's Money Ripples, whether it's moneyripples.com. We have the Money Ripples podcast on all platforms, including YouTube. And then, of course, we have at Money Ripples on social media. Now, if you're one of those people like, hey, I want to read a book and kind of get the stuff from it, I've got the Work Optional Blueprint that actually just came out back in November. And so it became a bestseller. The Work Optional Blueprint really breaks the stuff down more about how do you get lean? How do you free up that cash flow? How do you get liquid and get that money in your power and possession and then get it out to create passive income?
So that book again is the Work Optional Blueprint, the Work Optional Blueprint. Live free, be wealthy, make a difference. The Work Optional Blueprint. What's the best way for them to get that book, Chris?
Amazon is a great
Amazon.
place. Yep.
Simple enough. All right, yep. Amazon.
In a few months, it'll be an audiobook too.
And you got it in audio form.
It will be in a couple months. Yep.
Okay, nice. So you can get that on Amazon. And then again, that URL, www.moneyripples.com, and search for Money Ripples anywhere and you'll find it. Chris, thank you so much for joining me. I mean, you always bring the most brilliant ideas on creating cash flow. Thank you so much, Chris, for joining me.
You're welcome, Jay. Thanks for having me on.
All right. Well, there you have it. Another powerful episode of Raising Private Money. My friend Chris Miles, he just pulled back the curtain on what it really means to create cash flow and financial freedom outside the traditional financial system. And here's the big takeaway, at least for me. When you focus on cash flow, instead of just chasing net worth, you start building a life where the money works for you instead of you working for the money. Now, if you found value in today's episode, I've got a favor to ask of you. Don't keep this episode and this show a secret. Share this episode with a fellow real estate investor, text it to a friend, post it on social media, or better yet, tell someone in your network about Raising Private Money podcast. You see, the more people we reach, the more investors we help learn how to fund their deals without relying on banks, hard money lenders, or their own cash. And if you haven't done it so already, be sure to subscribe to the podcast and leave us a rating and a review. This helps us get the show out in front of more real estate investors just like you. I'm Jay Conner, the Private Money Authority, and I look forward to seeing you right here on the next episode of Raising Private Money.
Are you feeling inspired by the knowledge you gained in this episode? Then head over to jconner.com/moneyguide. That's jconner.com/moneyguide and download your free guide that shares 7 reasons why private money will skyrocket your real estate investing business right now. Again, that's jconner.com/moneyguide to get your free guide. We'll see you next time on Raising Private Money with Jay Conner.